Everyone, as Ren said, my name is Frank Swain. I'm an account executive with Switch Automation, and welcome to our webinar, Data-Driven Optimization for Sustainable Buildings and Cities. The webinar is the second of our three-part series on reset certification and data-driven monitoring. The first, which you can view on our Switch website and social media channels, explore the reset data standard in monitoring indoor air quality of the built environment. As a part of the World Green Building Week and the theme of building resilience, this session aims to address the importance of sustainability development, highlighting intuitive data approaches and practical applications to drive environmental impact. Please stay on until the end of the webinar. We'll have a special call to action to support World Green Building Week. So let's go ahead and go around the Zoom room to meet the panelists. Rachel, why don't we start with you? Tell the audience a little bit about yourself, your background, and what you do in the smart building industry.
Sure. Good morning and good evening, everyone. So this is Rachel. I am working as an innovation manager at PropTech here in Hong Kong. And property technology has been my daily job ever since. And I work with a lot of different developers, like in Asia mainly, to help them to find the right PropTech to support their own initiative. Like for example, like sustainability and wellness. And at the same time, we also aid the exchange of PropTech across the world, such that we provide consultation and go-to-market opportunities for different PropTech companies globally. And aside from PropTech, which I have been dealing with lots of property technology, I also work as an independent ESG consultant for one of the Hong Kong advisory and appraisal firm, which I have the hands-on experience for writing ESG report for different listed company, mainly real estate developers in Hong Kong.
Wonderful. Omar?
Yeah, hi everyone. Good morning and good evening. This is Omar Elrawy from GreenA Consultants. I'm a partner specialized in energy and sustainability. I've been working in the sustainability consulting for more than 10 years now. In addition to consulting, also I've been working in academia, published research as well as teaching assistant. Doing also several certification schemes now, lead the ILFI, as well as local certifications in Singapore.
Wonderful. Patti.
Thanks, Frank. My name is Patti Mason. I am here in Denver, Colorado, and I'm part of the Switch team. Like a lot of us at Switch, I wear many different hats, but relevant to the topic today is my work in helping us evolve our products so that it best aligns with sustainability certifications and standards and trends and opportunities for our customers. So prior to Switch, I spent about a decade at US Green Building Council, where I learned all about different rating systems, and not just rating systems, but also kind of the drivers behind and the motivations for adopting high performance building standards in design as well as through operations. So I'm excited about being at a technology company where we're really looking at that nexus between sustainability, ongoing operations, and technology. So thanks, Frank.
Thanks, guys. Well, this is quite the esteemed panel and a great crew for this subject matter. Before we get to the Q&A, we have a couple of questions and prompts we'd like to start with. Patti, I would like to go back to you and start with you. So with this industry transformation, it can be a bit of a double-edged sword. Buildings around the world are feeling all kinds of pressure to lower their carbon emissions from tenants, investors, policymakers, you name it. This has been fueling the rise in smart building technology, but it can also be a bit overwhelming for portfolio managers, owners, anybody else who's involved in the building industry. How do they approach this? How do they approach this without being overwhelmed, and where do they really start?
Sure. So I think it's really important to start with what you have. Whether you're a tenant or a building owner or operator, there's a ton of data that's there and available to you right now. And so I often think that the best advice to give with people just starting out is to begin that data finding mission of, who has the energy bill, who's actually looking at data right now in my organization, And I think that's relevant, really regardless of kind of your role in real estate. I think there's a lot of room for us as building tenants to actually, advocate for greater transparency in building data. And the easiest one, in my opinion, is just that monthly utility bill. You should be able to get a general sense in energy, waste, and water just by looking at monthly bills. And I think the more that we ask thought leaders within our organizations, building operators, the building team that we see every day at our offices, I think the more we talk about our desire for data and explain why we want the data, what we plan to do with it, and how we plan to use that to evolve and to be better stewards of the environment. I think that opens up a lot of opportunities that are easy to get started with. And additionally, I'll add too that there are tenant-based programs. And when Switch decided to pursue Reset accreditation and have our platform certified as kind of a Reset approved data platform, I was really excited to see that program also addressed tenant spaces, because I think there's a huge opportunity for us, even as tenants, small tenants and medium-sized tenants, to drive some of this change from within our own organizations. And so looking for programs like that allow you to get started on even just your own tenant space.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like when Patti, you talk about tenants, and like in Hong Kong, because of the pricing, like a lot of us don't own any properties, like residentially speaking and commercially speaking. So we got this like real estate developer, like conglomerates, and they have like maybe 80% of the land, of the land in Hong Kong owned by them. So actually the responsibility of writing the ESG report lies on the listed real estate developers, but the real people using the data is the tenant. So they have no control whatever on the tenant, because the rent usually include the electricity, the water bill, and they charge the same even though how much they use. So we are trying to push something called the green lease. So the real estate developers has to sign some sort of lease with the tenant to promise that they will be environmental friendly, whatnot. But the thing is, the real estate developers has to initiate some sort of data tracking and data analytics to know how well or how bad the tenant is doing. And that's how we do some sort of sustainability from top down. You run from the real estate developers with the ESG report, and then the developers can push the initiative down to the tenant. And that's how I think is one of the effective way to do it.
Right. I know green leases are slowly but surely making inroads here in Denver. So totally agree. If that starts to get traction, it could be really game changing. Omar, anything?
I'd like to add something. Actually, we see also potential for IoT to have some, I would call, dynamic interaction between the tenants and the owners, because actually we design for tenants, and then the connection. I mean, we just print a lease agreement or green lease agreement and leave it to the tenants without interaction. So I think that IoT and having a cloud and having a connection between the tenants and the clients, or the tenants and the owner, will play a role in driving sustainability. Because also we don't interact with tenants unless maybe 1 year later, when we go and do verification and say, oh, this space has changed. Maybe one tenant installed new units or installed new FCU or installed new equipment that we were not aware of, and we start to do verification from the beginning. So I see if it happens dynamic in some way using IoT and using the data that we have, for sure will drive sustainability better.
Yeah, I mean, investors matter a huge amount. Obviously policies matter, but the clients of buildings at the end of the day are tenants. So if tenants can really drive things, that will really change the game. Omar, I would like to stick with you for this next question to kick it off. So governments are offering incentives to promote and invest in the development of green buildings. Do you think incentivizing buildings will help to accelerate a greener, more sustainable built environment?
Certainly, yes. Yeah, for sure. Because actually, we all lately, maybe Singapore and maybe also globally, we have noticed or we have witnessed this spike in interest in sustainability linked loans, and in funds also. I would call it technology linked fund, or technology innovation related funds. So once this was announced, or once this is being published or being there by the government and also by investors, everyone is interested to go for GreenA. Everyone comes and asks us as consultants how we get or how to facilitate having this loan or this fund. So this also drives the part of having more innovative technologies being implemented in our buildings to push our sustainability forward. I would also add one thing, that IoT plays a very essential part here, because normally we see the investor or the government or the funding body would be always interested to see the ROI, to see the return on their investment, and how really the technology or their technology or their innovation will perform during operation. So having IoT there, or having all the data there to measure and verify all those equipment and all those innovations is very essential. Actually, it's very important.
Absolutely.
I'd be curious, Omar, if there's resistance between, the policymakers and the real estate community, even when there is money on the table to adopt these technologies. Is there resistance in sharing data? We certainly experienced that here. Yeah, we said.
It happens for sure. It's a challenge actually on sharing data, because initially everyone want to have logging, or to have reading and monitoring all kinds of data, and want to have everything accessible on the cloud. Ideally, this is what we want. Ideally, not only for verification, also for our own research purpose. We need to know every detail of this technology, how it will perform. But then when it comes to talking with the client, or when it comes to being practical, privacy is an issue. I would say privacy for sure is an issue. They are concerned about what are you sharing, and for who has access to this cloud. And so it's still a challenge for sure. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I know it was a challenge convincing, the automobile industry to disclose like miles per gallon and start pushing that. So there's always resistance with those industries up front, but eventually, hopefully you can get them to see the light. Rachel, anything you'd like to add?
Well, when you talk about data, I think Singapore is doing much better than Hong Kong. We really have data, and when you talk about green buildings, I did some research, and all I can got is the green building numbers, and that's it. But when you talk about incentivize buildings to become green, I think actually Hong Kong government got a really great job by knowing what exactly the real estate developers want. So because Hong Kong has been so crowded, and the GFA has been a real issue, because we all it costs around $1,000 for 1 square feet or more. Actually, it's around 2,000 right now. So you can see how expensive it is, and GFA is really important. So when the building can have some sort of green certification, like BEAM or LEED certification, they can have around 10% overall cap of 10% on the gross floor area concession for the new building developers. So when you talk about any kind of new building in Hong Kong, they have some sort of certification for sure. But the real key is how to incentivize the building owner of the existing building, because they have relatively small resources, and the challenge they're having is much higher. And I think 90% of the emission costs from the existing building instead of the new one. So I'm not sure if Singapore or then USA has any solution for the existing building yet, but Hong Kong is still yet to go.
Yeah, I think that point dovetails well with our next question, which is, and maybe to bring it back to you, Rachel, what are some of the common challenges that the buildings and building owners face when it comes to obtaining or managing that data to achieving those sustainability goals?
Cost, we always talk about cost, because when we talk about PropTech or ESG or sustainability, we always talk about the cost or the money you spend on sustainability or green is going to pay back in 5 or 6 years, because all the energy you save or whatnot. But the thing is, we have to admit that we have to pay a price for our environment. It is not a sort of monetary investment. You actually have to dedicate some effort and some cost for our environment and for better sustainability performances. So when we talk about you have to put out a huge cost for the data analytics, and then after you analyze your data, you have to pay another technology or another effort to reduce your energy, and then it's going to pay back in 5 to 10 years. They're just going to say no, because there's nothing, like they cannot expand their GFA, they cannot receive money for that, and why should they, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, what's the first question asset managers typically ask? What's the ROI? You know, what's the cost and what's the return? Omar?
It is, yeah. It is. I would say it's a bit easier, or sometimes it's easier to fund or to motivate those technologies or innovations that will get sensible ROI in terms of energy. But our challenge is to incentivize other technologies that will only maybe contribute to IAQ, to air quality, or to thermal comfort. This is very difficult to show the investor that we need fund to invest in a technology that will enhance air quality without having sensible ROI, because honestly the ROI is not tangible money. We understand that it's good for the health and well-being and for the productivity of documents and everything, but to communicate this with the investor or with the funding body, it's really challenging. And sometimes they ask us, okay, how will you verify this technology? How for example, circadian lighting, how will you verify that the circadian lighting boosts your productivity or boosts the performance of your occupants? It's very, very challenging. Maybe with more data we have now, we can do, I'm not sure, but the current situation is really challenging to fund or to motivate those technologies that are not related to energy.
Right. Patti, what do you think? How do we get them to motivate those technologies?
Well, we need people to start caring about people, you know, because again, not to sound too simple, but you know, yeah, I think we do need an ROI on the occupant being in a healthy, safe, sustainable, resilient built environment versus, you know, something that's not. So I think I love the idea of more research being done on the those health benefits for people. And when we start thinking about how many people our governments employ and put into buildings, that maybe that starts shifting the conversations around the incentives so that they can start sharing some of this with the private sector, who will be very bottom line driven. But, you know, when you talk about investors and that are hang on to assets for a long time, or, you know, they're institutional owners that are going to be putting, you know, their best and brightest inside of the building. So, you know, so I think that there's a much different conversation that's happening around investing in indoor air quality in technology, and as a recruitment mechanism, as a way to keep people productive in their spaces. But yeah, you're absolutely right that by and large, average, you know, real estate decision is being made right now based on just the bottom line, and energy is a lot easier to demonstrate that. I also think this is a great case for smart building technologies that allow you to kind of span not just energy, but looking at energy and indoor air quality, as well as other, you know, future areas like water and waste. I think are going to become increasingly more talked about as we move out of COVID and start going kind of back to some of the more traditional environmental issues that we face here in the mountain region, especially. So, you know, how do we create platforms and solutions that are as resilient and flexible as the buildings need to become? And yeah, thinking of like, what is the return on investment of getting people back into buildings faster the next time, you know, we have a global pandemic? There's got to be someone thinking about that. Certainly our school buildings are thinking about that. You know, higher ed suffered immensely by not being able to get students into those classrooms. And so, you know, I think that's another area where we might see greater investment in some of the technologies as we move forward.
Absolutely. Excuse me. Another, maybe to state the obvious, but to layer in, you know, sustainability into the ROI, or governments proposing policies like carbon taxes, cap and trade, that'll certainly get people's attention. That's probably maybe another webinar for another time, because that's a deep subject. But maybe touching a little bit on that, just bringing it back to real estate with green building standards. Rachel, let's go with you in Hong Kong. What are some of the major barriers to enforcing green building standards based on your experience?
Like, I think to enforce the green standard is not really an issue for us because like we do have a green building council, we have different standards, like we have the gold, the silver, like the rating. So it wasn't an issue, but I think right now, I would like to discuss is that like green building, is it green building having a certification? Does it mean it is really green? Because like I saw a lot of like example, they do have a lot of window in the skyscraper, like just to reduce, just to have more like natural lighting, and then you can reduce some sort of like you can turn off the light sometimes. But the thing is, we get so hot in the summer in Hong Kong. I think it's the same for Singapore. You just have to turn up the AC because of the sunlight. And without some sort of data, without having a deep analytics after we use the building, it just remain a green building. That's it. But we have no idea whatsoever, like how can it contribute to the environment? Is it really doing any carbon reduction or energy reduction? We have no idea about that. And so I think this is one of the blind spots in Hong Kong. Yeah. I'm not sure if other city works the same, but so far, like green building is just a piece of cake to build it.
Are there specific policies in Hong Kong that are proving to be successful in terms of enforcing or moving the needle on green buildings, or is that still TBD?
I think because in Hong Kong, real estate developers has a really loud voice, like they can talk to government, like they are not under government because they got so rich and like they got land, like who to fight with them. So all the government can do is to give incentive, money, growth per area, and that's it. So I think so far they really don't have any actual map or any direction to like really push forward green building yet.
Yeah.
That's such an interesting analogy. It's like a piece of cake because in my former life, there would be cake at the celebrations of the LEED certification. There would be a cake to celebrate the plaque. And I think new construction certifications are valid. I think they're important, they're needed, they help around ongoing. Oh, sorry, my internet dropped out.
You're good now.
The movement has to be around ongoing maintenance, ongoing operational excellence, and celebrating the leadership in that category, not just celebrating the new plaque, but celebrating those that have committed to the ongoing journey of high performance buildings. And that's again where all the different stakeholders get involved.
Yeah, I think that the last decade was about that kind of building certification at that point in time. In that proliferated the I think popularity and importance of green buildings and really put it on the map. But I think this next decade is going to be about monitoring based green buildings, because a lot of times a green building would be, say, LEED certified at that certification phase, but then once that plaque was on the wall, as you said, and people had their cake, they would change all the dials and it probably wouldn't be that sustainable and efficient than it was when it was first certified. Omar, anything you want to add?
I reflect, I like the analogy now between Hong Kong and US, so maybe I reflect on Singapore, also our incentives here. So I would say having a master plan, we have a global or we have a government published master plan. Having a master plan or a national master plan that everyone like to contribute in was very effective actually for everyone to come and contact us or contact consultants on how to achieve or how to be part of this national target. So this year we had our Green Master Plan published 80-80-80. So 80-80-80 means that 80% of new buildings will be green, should be super low buildings. 80% of existing should be green, and 80%. And 80% of all new constructions should be certified. So having by GFA. So having this national target is so motivating. In addition to having the fund for innovation. So having those two, I think, balance the industry very well. In addition to that, most corporates now like to have also their own portfolio, or their own sustainability targets and their own sustainability reporting being published annually, maybe, and it's good for their portfolio. It's good to showcase. So maybe those three things are really motivating and really pushing forward the green building industry in Singapore.
Absolutely. I do want to move to our kind of final prompted question, which is, it's the universal thing on everybody's mind, and that's COVID. You know, we're living in a strange COVID-19 world today, still, unfortunately, for the most part, depending on where you are. How do you guys as panelists think, what do you guys think buildings can do on the data end and the design end to pandemic proof, or at least like make buildings a little more resistant to kind of the COVID health conscious world that we're in when it comes to occupants' health, safety, and of course, comfort?
I start.
Go ahead, yeah, please, Omar. Sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, I've seen, or maybe we all seen, that the data already contributed very well in the previous year or 2 years towards resisting the pandemic, or towards even having some sense of or having a good traceability of the pandemic, categorizing into clusters and putting the thing somehow under control. So I see the future is all about the future to have a real pandemic resistant building or environment is all about data. So maybe in case we already have the data there, we have all the occupancy sensors, or maybe having all our thermographic cameras and all that. Maybe the future is that adding another layer of intelligence about this data, or more intelligence about this data. So the data is processed much faster and in a more intelligent way. So we can act faster. We used to act, but not as fast as needed. So maybe the future is having this intelligence, this layer of intelligence, to act more promptly, or more quickly.
Yeah. Rachel, what are you seeing on that end in Hong Kong?
I mean, in Hong Kong, real estate developer really shaken the position, like COVID really shaken the position, like people don't go to a hotel anymore. And then we got hesitate of going to office, and like a lot of retail closed down. So they cannot just rely on the brick and mortar access. So in recent year, we got a lot of inquiries about like how to do digital transformation, like how to use PropTech to do sustainability. And when we talk about sustainability, it's not just environmental, of course, it's ESG, environmental, social, and governance. So wellness of the tenant is one, or maybe the hygiene or the safety of the tenant is really important too. And it is one of the great things that a lot of real estate developers are listed in Hong Kong, and therefore they have ESG reports. They have the data already. Like maybe they are not tracking their data with some sort of sensor or IoT, but they do the paperwork of checking the billing, and we know at which parts they have to reduce the consumption, at which part they can have some sort of improvement. And I think even without the technology, like at your own household, if you spend some time, you can get some data. If you pay some money, you can get some data, you know. But the thing is the innovative mindset, you know, how they really prepare themselves to say, oh, the building is not about selling the brick and mortar anymore. It's not about like giving people space. It's giving a service, a package, a lifestyle of selling sustainability or environmental friendly. Like that's what draw people into the building, or else people are just staying at home working instead of working in the office, you know. And so I really hope that the COVID, like because of the COVID, we enjoy more of the nature, we can fly, and then we got some clean air in India and Hong Kong too, because of the like the shutdown of industrial buildings. And I think people really take this COVID as a new chance for a new start. And I do hope that we can see more digital transformation like afterwards.
Yeah. Patti, what do you think?
Yeah, same to both of my panelists and their remarks. And I would just add, I think that remote management and cloud-based solutions, like we had to send men and women into buildings to change temperatures during the middle of a global pandemic. And I think that that's ridiculous. We have the technology. We need the trades and the next generation of building operators to come along and embrace these tools so that we can use tech to make running buildings, you know, a fun job again, and a job that young people line up to do.
Absolutely. Thank you, Peter. So Peter's question for the panelists is, will it be feasible to find a way to correlate data on IAQ indoor air quality versus the number of medical / sick leaves taken? Or is there a percentage of days of staff falling sick? Omar?
I would say it's feasible for sure. We can link so many things for zoning. Again, it's a matter, I see IoT is all a matter of early planning. If I'm early in my design phase, plan very well for my IoT and how it will work and do the proper zoning and the proper mapping, I would say, then for sure I can link exactly the air quality in this room or in this space to the leaves by the occupants here, or to their probability of falling sick, or I can do that. Also, I've seen some research linking to thermographic floor planning. So I might have a vision of my whole floor plan, a thermographic image of my whole floor plan, so I can early detect maybe fever, maybe I can also detect, or I can have a better sense of thermal comfort. This, in addition to post-occupancy survey, I would say for sure can help us have better sensible ROI on air quality, or at least we can act earlier on air quality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's all those studies about CO2, you know, air quality affecting productivity. I think there's about to be a wave of studies showcasing how indoor air quality has a correlation to sick days and days taken off.
And they're certainly looking at it in the context of classrooms and how air moves across a group of students sitting, and even how the transmission of disease from a teacher to a student. It's pretty interesting areas of research going on right now.
Yeah, 100%. It looks like we have another one. As for the panelists, as you guys think about the future of smart buildings in light of the pandemic and subsequent disruption, what current gaps are likely to be the most problematic if not addressed? So what do we need to address first to overcome some of this?
Well, I think in Hong Kong, we need to address the importance of data, because, like, first of all, data cannot directly turn into money. So when people talk about, like, I want to do a net zero building, like what kind of PropTech you can introduce me, the first step I always introduce is some sort of smart center and data analytics model. Like, I need to know what's happening in order to suggest, like, what's technology for you to adopt. But they say, okay, but this data collection process does not generate any money. Like, it is more like an investment. And people talk about, oh, okay, yeah, I would think about it, because data is not really, like, they cannot turn into money. Like, they just know, oh, how many water I'm using, how many energy I'm using, and that's it. And that's actually the first step. And when this first step involved money and not any return, they hesitated, and that's it. But without this first step, you sort of have to learn how to walk and before you learn how to ride a bike, I guess. So, like, they just want to learn how to bike to travel, but all they need is to learn how to walk. And I'm still trying to, like, having these sort of difficulties in persuading people, like, data is important, even though it's not, like, equals to a dollar sign. So I guess the future buildings, like, we talk about lots of, like, certification and green building, like, standard, but the thing is, like, we need to monitor the performance of the building.
Oh.
Maybe I would add also one gap related to the usability or the ease of dealing with the data. Sometimes we find that a lot of data and the FM is not able to process or to get the best use out of the data. Or maybe they want to modify their IoT program or their PMS program, I call it IoT, but maybe they would like to modify the program. Some occupants complain from some sensors or some dimming, and the FM cannot reprogram or cannot deal with it. So maybe if I would suggest that the gap is, I call it complexity. If the thing is less complex and easier to program, easier to deal with, might also reduce this gap in my own point of view.
Wonderful. I think we'll move to the last question now for the panelists. Do you all see a big difference in IoT adoption and interest in data among different types of buildings, verticals, if you will, like industrial versus residential or multifamily, I guess I should say, versus commercial, retail? Where you see the strongest interest? Where do you maybe see the most resistance? Patti? Haven't heard from you for a minute. Just follow up my panelists.
I have very little residential experience, only my own experience. And I listened to my 10-year-old running our whole household by the Alexa already. Like, you know, I think people embrace technology as individuals and households much easier than the real estate industry. That it's more interoperable, it's easier to deploy. And yeah, so I don't know. I just don't have as much experience working across home builders as a huge, you know, effort, but I don't know. My guess is yes, very different. Omar, are you?
I would compare commercial to industrial actually, because I see a huge potential of savings in industrial buildings. I see huge potential of energy savings in data centers currently. Data centers only from IoT can save up to 40% in published cases and published research. So the impact is really huge when it comes to warehouses and data centers. Comparing to commercial, I see maybe if in an office space, however amount of automation we add, the savings will not be much, as well as also sometimes actually we see a lot of automation, a lot of dimming in the sensors and fluctuation might not suit the occupant or the user when he's in his work environment. Maybe he like to have simpler or less fluctuating environment. This is how I see it. So contrasting commercial to industrial, I would say the huge load and the huge savings comes in industrial for sure.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think especially when it comes to IoT of energy and helping improve that, you know, industrial can have such a bigger energy footprint per square foot, and thus they are just naturally more incentivized to embrace technologies to help reduce that. Rachel, anything to close it out?
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about industrial buildings, like it's all about data center right now. And it's really interesting to know that, like, to share with you guys that Hong Kong has just launched a environmental assessment tool just for the data center. And like, because data center is usually aircon and stuff, and with this assessment tool, they can reduce around 17% of the data energy consumption. And it was just released around a month ago, as I recalled. But I guess, well, because residential, we don't have a lot of flexibilities. Like it's just all the aircon and stuff. Like it's good to know how much you spend at home, but you can't really do a lot about it. Commercial, in the other hand, like there's a lot of flexibilities, a lot of people, there's a lot of type of the commercial buildings. And for the industrial, I think we are going past like the interest of data has moving past from commercial to industrial, and especially with the data centers. So the assessment tool is really a step forward in Hong Kong. And yeah, look forward, like there's more tools for the industrial.
Wonderful. Well, I think we're pretty much at time. I really want to just thank our panelists for taking the time to participate in this webinar. Omar, thank you. Rachel, thank you. Patti, thank you so much. In closing, you know, as I alluded to at the start, we do have one call to action, and that is, you know, to celebrate World Green Building, or excuse me, to celebrate World Green Building Week. Green Building Council leaders from around the world have united to deliver one powerful message, and that is we must create building resilience to climate change and for our people and for our economies. To get involved in that, please visit worldgbc.org. That is worldgbc.org. Thank you again for everybody for participating, for viewing. Please be sure to follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Visit our websites, and stay tuned for the next webinar. Thanks again.